The no-kill rule is one of Batman's most distinguishing characteristics. It's what sets him apart from the criminals he fights and is often seen as a symbol of his humanity. Batman is adamant about never killing a criminal, believing that taking a life would make him no better than the criminals he seeks to stop. This rule is not just a personal choice, it's a philosophical stance, one rooted in Batman's belief in the sanctity of life and his commitment to a higher form of justice. However, the question must be asked, does this moral code hurt Gotham? Over time, it has become clear that Gotham's criminals, particularly those like the Joker and other prominent villains, are not just being arrested and then released, but are allowed to continue their rampages with little consequence. The Joker, for example, has been allowed to escape countless times despite committing horrendous crimes. He represents chaos and anarchy, a force that thrives on the very idea that Batman's moral code has kept him from taking the necessary steps to stop him for good. In this exploration, we will take a look at how Batman's no-kill rule may, in fact, be enabling Gotham's descent into further chaos. By adhering to this rule, Batman maintains a morally pure image. But this purity may also be reinforcing Gotham's descent into lawlessness, where the criminal element is allowed to grow stronger and more dangerous. Rather than ending crime, Batman's refusal to kill could be perpetuating it, ensuring Gotham's never-ending struggle with violence and corruption. To understand the full impact of Batman's no-kill rule, we must first examine its origins. The rule stems from the deep trauma Batman experienced as a child, the violent deaths of his parents in a dark alley. From this tragedy, Bruce Wayne made a solemn vow that he would dedicate his life to protecting others from suffering the same fate. However, the vow he took was more than just about preventing violence. It was about not becoming the thing he hated. In his early years as Batman, the desire for vengeance was overwhelming. But over time, Batman's core philosophy evolved. Instead of becoming an instrument of death, he sought to be a force for justice, believing that even Gotham's worst criminals deserved the opportunity for rehabilitation and redemption. Batman's no-kill rule was born out of this moral dilemma. The idea was that killing would make him no better than the criminals he fought, that it would strip away the very humanity that made him Bruce Wayne. This moral purity became the cornerstone of Batman's code. He believed that by refusing to kill, he maintained a distinction between himself and the criminals he fought, and by doing so, remained a protector of Gotham rather than its judge, jury, and executioner. But over time, Batman's rigid adherence to this code has led to unexpected consequences. While it kept him from becoming a killer, it has also tied his hands in confronting the most dangerous criminals in Gotham. Villains like the Joker, whose madness and chaotic nature have made him an unstoppable force, have exploited this very weakness. The Joker knows that Batman's moral code will never allow him to kill, and thus he continues his reign of terror with impunity. This paradox lies at the core of Batman's no-kill rule. While it symbolizes his humanity, it also reveals his limitations in the battle for Gotham's soul. The most immediate consequence of Batman's no-kill rule is the perpetuation of Gotham's criminal underworld. By refusing to take the final step and eliminate Gotham's most dangerous criminals, Batman inadvertently allows them to continue their reign of terror. The Joker is perhaps the most infamous example of this dynamic. Despite being captured numerous times, the Joker continues to escape and wreak havoc on Gotham. This pattern is not just a failure of Batman's efforts to stop him, but a direct consequence of Batman's moral code. The Joker, much like many of Gotham's most dangerous criminals, thrives because he knows that Batman cannot kill him. This allows the Joker to push Batman to the brink of his moral limits, testing the strength of Batman's resolve. If Batman ever broke his rule and killed the Joker, he would lose everything he stands for. However, by keeping the Joker alive, Batman ensures that Gotham will always have a threat like him lurking in the shadows. In this way, Batman's refusal to kill ensures that the cycle of crime in Gotham continues. Gotham's criminals are not just motivated by power or greed, they are driven by the need to challenge Batman's moral code to see if they can push him to the point where he abandons his humanity. Each time Batman defeats one villain, another, often more dangerous and unhinged, rises to take their place. This escalating cycle is exacerbated by Batman's no-kill rule, which creates a scenario where villains are not eliminated but merely delayed, growing more violent and destructive with each passing encounter. This dynamic is particularly evident in Batman's relationship with the criminal mastermind, Bane. Bane, like the Joker, understands Batman's limitations. He exploits Batman's no-kill rule to create chaos and control Gotham. By physically breaking Batman, Bane forces him into a position where his moral absolutism is tested. He is forced to question whether his rule is the best way to protect Gotham, or if it is, in fact, making Gotham's situation worse. This psychological warfare exemplifies how Gotham's criminals have learned to exploit Batman's moral code to achieve their own ends. The problem with Batman's no-kill rule is not that it's inherently wrong, but that it's an ideal that cannot exist in a world defined by chaos. Gotham's criminals are not simply misguided individuals, they are manifestations of Gotham's systemic failures. Batman, by refusing to acknowledge this, prolongs the city's suffering. His moral code is not flexible enough to adapt to the city's changing needs. Gotham cannot be saved by a man who believes that the only way to achieve justice is through self-imposed moral restrictions. Sometimes, justice demands more than a moral stance. It requires action, and in this sense, Batman's refusal to kill has hurt Gotham more than it has helped. The most dangerous aspect of Batman's no-kill rule is its role in the endless cycle of violence and retribution that defines Gotham's criminal world. Batman's rule prevents him from taking the final step in stopping the most dangerous criminals, allowing them to escape justice time and time again. This perpetuates the problem of crime in Gotham, which only grows more violent and complex with each passing year. The no-kill rule gives rise to an environment in which Gotham's criminals are able to evolve in response to Batman's actions. They grow more unpredictable, more extreme, and more dangerous, knowing that Batman will never take the final step to stop them. In this sense, Batman is not creating a safer city by adhering to his rule. He is ensuring that the criminal element in Gotham becomes even more dangerous and entrenched. Take the Joker's influence on Gotham as an example. The Joker, a symbol of pure chaos, thrives on Batman's moral code because it creates a cycle in which Batman is forced to continually engage in combat with him, testing his moral limits. The Joker is not a criminal who seeks power or money. He is a force of nature, designed to challenge Batman's very philosophy. By refusing to kill the Joker, Batman is essentially letting him operate unchecked. The Joker continues to escape and return, wreaking havoc, because Batman will never take the drastic step of ending his life. This cycle of violence escalates because Batman's inability to kill does not address the root cause of Gotham's problems, the breakdown of its systems and the dehumanization of its criminal element. Gotham's crime rates cannot be reduced simply by incarcerating criminals, as Gotham's prisons and institutions are often equally corrupt. Without a solution to the systemic issues that perpetuate crime, Gotham is left in a perpetual state of crisis. At the heart of Batman's no-kill rule lies a fundamental ethical dilemma. Is Batman seeking justice, or is he seeking vengeance for his own trauma? Batman's belief that he must protect Gotham from the criminals who threaten it stems from a need to right the wrongs of his own past. However, his emotional and psychological struggles may cloud his judgment. His refusal to kill criminals is grounded not just in a moral stance, but in an inability to forgive and let go of his own pain. Batman's actions, though intended to protect Gotham, are often driven by a desire for vengeance against the criminals who embody the trauma he experienced as a child. This dilemma is amplified when we consider the concept of redemption. By refusing to kill Gotham's criminals, Batman presents the possibility of rehabilitation. But is this truly justice? Or is it a form of moral idealism that ignores the severity of the criminals' actions? Many of Gotham's villains are beyond saving, yet Batman's refusal to kill them leaves them free to wreak havoc again and again. The notion that every criminal has the potential for redemption may be noble, but it ignores the darker reality of Gotham's criminal world, a reality in which rehabilitation is often impossible. Batman's insistence on leaving criminals alive for the sake of redemption may ultimately do more harm than good. Batman's unyielding adherence to his no-kill rule is one of the central pillars of his identity and his mission. For Batman, the line between hero and villain is drawn not just by the law, but by his personal code. His rule, never to kill a criminal, no matter the circumstances, stems from a deeply personal conviction. The death of his parents marked the defining trauma of his life, and from that moment forward, Batman vowed to fight for justice in a way that would keep him from becoming like the criminals he fought. Killing, in Batman's eyes, would make him no better than the very people he sought to stop, stripping away the humanity he fought so hard to preserve. He viewed the act of killing as the ultimate line, the moral boundary he would never cross, as it would forever mark him as a figure defined not by justice, but by vengeance. However, this moral absolutism has had profound and often disastrous consequences for Gotham. While it is easy to admire Batman's unwavering belief in justice, his refusal to kill has, over time, led to the very chaos he sought to eliminate. The criminals of Gotham, emboldened by the knowledge that Batman will never kill them, have been allowed to rise, evolve, and strengthen their operations. Gotham's most dangerous criminals, from the Joker to Bane, from Two-Face to Scarecrow, are not simply motivated by greed or malice, but by the knowledge that they can push Batman to his limits. Each time a criminal in Gotham is apprehended, they are released, and their power grows once again, all because of Batman's adherence to a rule that, while noble, is increasingly ineffective in the fight for Gotham's soul. The Joker, in particular, represents the most extreme example of how Batman's no-kill rule has allowed Gotham's criminal underworld to not only survive, but thrive. The Joker is the embodiment of chaos, a figure who delights in pushing Batman to the edge of his moral limits. The Joker understands that Batman's moral code will never allow him to kill, and he exploits this weakness at every opportunity. The Joker's repeated escapes from Arkham Asylum, his ability to destroy entire portions of Gotham, and his ability to manipulate and torment Batman are direct results of Batman's inability to end his life. The Joker, in many ways, is a product of Batman's own psychological state, a reflection of the internal conflict Batman experiences. The Joker knows that Batman cannot take the final step, and this allows him to continue his reign of terror. By keeping the Joker alive, Batman allows him to continue destabilizing Gotham, perpetuating a cycle that makes it impossible for Gotham to heal. The irony of this dynamic is that the very rule Batman has created to protect his own humanity is the rule that allows Gotham's most dangerous criminals to keep rising. Gotham's criminal world is defined by its adaptability, and the criminals Batman faces grow more sophisticated with each encounter. The more Batman tries to defeat them, the more he unknowingly enables them. The Joker, for example, continuously becomes more dangerous because Batman cannot end his life. This principle applies to other villains as well, like Bane, who adapts and gains even greater power because of Batman's insistence on playing by a moral code that doesn't allow for definitive action. By the time Batman defeats one villain, another has already taken their place, usually stronger and more lethal than before. The criminals Batman fights are never truly defeated because Batman's refusal to kill them leaves the door open for them to return. In this way, Batman's actions create an environment where the criminals of Gotham grow stronger with each iteration, creating an escalating arms race between Batman and Gotham's most dangerous inhabitants. But Batman's no-kill rule is not just about the criminals he faces. It also reflects a philosophical flaw in Batman's approach to justice. Batman believes that true justice can only be served by following his moral code, a code that refuses to take a life under any circumstance. However, this view is overly simplistic. It does not take into account the fact that some criminals are beyond redemption and that certain threats can only be eradicated through extreme measures. The Joker, for instance, is not a criminal who is interested in wealth or power. He is a force of pure chaos. His actions are driven not by greed or revenge, but by a nihilistic desire to see Batman's moral code broken. The Joker does not care about power. He cares about proving that Batman is not and never will be the moral paragon he believes himself to be. By refusing to kill the Joker, Batman not only fails to stop him, but allows him to continue wreaking havoc. Batman's moral absolutism is an impediment to true justice because it prevents him from seeing that there are times when the ultimate choice is between killing a criminal and allowing further destruction to occur. This moral rigidity also impacts Batman's relationship with Gotham itself. Gotham, like Batman, is trapped in a cycle of violence and chaos. The city's problems are systemic, entrenched in poverty, corruption, and a broken criminal justice system. Batman's fight against crime is in many ways a reflection of Gotham's own failure. Gotham cannot be saved by one man acting outside the law, no matter how skilled or dedicated he is. Batman's insistence on working alone, on following his code, on refusing to kill, creates a situation where Gotham remains perpetually broken. The system that Batman seeks to fix is not just a reflection of Gotham's criminals, but a reflection of the city's inability to evolve and change. The criminals Batman faces are not just individuals, they are the products of Gotham's institutional failures. In the long run, Batman's failure to adapt, to work within the system, and to acknowledge the limitations of his mission prevents Gotham from ever healing. Gotham cannot be saved by Batman's solitary vigilante actions alone. The city needs institutional reform, the rebuilding of trust between the people and the law enforcement, and the creation of systems that can address the root causes of crime. Batman's no-kill rule, while rooted in a noble desire to protect life, ultimately leaves Gotham's systemic issues unaddressed. By refusing to take drastic action, Batman ensures that the city's deep-seated issues continue to fester. Gotham cannot heal while its protector remains locked in a battle with criminals who adapt faster than he can defeat them. This brings us to the concept of justice versus vengeance. Batman's no-kill rule is often portrayed as a symbol of his dedication to justice, but over time, it becomes clear that this rule is rooted in vengeance. Batman is driven by the trauma of his past, and this trauma fuels his mission. He is not just trying to stop criminals. He is trying to prevent others from experiencing the same loss he did. Batman's drive for justice is motivated by a desire to right the wrongs of his past, and his moral code has become an extension of that need for vengeance. Batman believes that he can stop Gotham's criminals without crossing the line into becoming a killer. But the reality is that Gotham's problems require more than just moral purity. They require action, and sometimes that action means taking steps that Batman has sworn never to take. By sticking to his rule, Batman prevents himself from making the hard choices necessary to stop Gotham's criminals once and for all. Moreover, Batman's obsession with moral absolutism, the belief that there is one right way to enforce justice, leads him into a psychological trap. He begins to see the world in black and white terms. Criminals must be stopped, and the rule of law must be upheld, regardless of the consequences. This makes Batman increasingly unable to adapt to the changing dynamics of Gotham's criminal landscape. Gotham's problems are complex, and Batman's simple rule of not killing does not solve them. In fact, his rule exacerbates the problem, as it forces him to engage in a never-ending battle with criminals who are constantly adapting and evolving to circumvent his moral code. As Gotham's criminals grow more dangerous and Batman's fight grows more desperate, it becomes clear that Batman's no-kill rule is more of a limitation than a moral virtue. His inability to eliminate Gotham's most dangerous criminals ensures that they will return again and again, more deadly and more dangerous each time. This relentless cycle ultimately harms Gotham more than it helps. Batman's adherence to his no-kill rule creates a world where criminals are allowed to operate unchecked, and Gotham's suffering continues. What Batman fails to realize is that true justice is not about adhering to rigid moral principles, but about understanding the complexities of human nature and making decisions that are in the best interest of the people he has vowed to protect. To begin understanding the extent of the damage caused by Batman's no-kill rule, it is crucial to delve into the psychological aspect of his mission. Batman, as a person, is a product of his trauma. His parents' brutal murder in Crime Alley is the defining event of his life, and it fuels everything Batman does. This event marks the birth of his unwavering resolve to rid Gotham of crime and violence. However, it is important to recognize that trauma, especially the kind that Bruce Wayne endured, cannot be fully processed or healed by simply acting out of a sense of duty. Batman's moral code, and specifically his refusal to kill, stems from a desire to prevent others from suffering as he did, from losing loved ones to senseless violence. Batman believes that by enforcing a strict moral code, he maintains a sense of justice, a line that keeps him from becoming like the criminals he pursues. This internal battle, this need to separate himself from his pain, is what gives Batman's no-kill rule its foundation. However, as time passes, it becomes clear that Batman's trauma is not healed by adherence to a strict moral rule, but rather, it deepens. His refusal to kill perpetuates the very cycle of violence that caused his pain in the first place. Gotham's criminals, as we've seen with characters like the Joker, are not deterred by Batman's rule. Instead, they use it against him. The Joker is perhaps the best example of this. He constantly pushes Batman to his limits, trying to get him to break his rule, not because he is interested in Batman's death, but because he wants to expose Batman's internal struggle and force him into a position where his rigid sense of justice is no longer tenable. The Joker's games are not about simple criminal acts. They are about shattering Batman's moral compass. Joker's ability to repeatedly escape Arkham Asylum, to wreak havoc on Gotham's citizens, and to continue his reign of terror is a direct result of Batman's refusal to take decisive action. By not killing the Joker, Batman ensures that the city's greatest criminal mastermind will always find a way to escape. Batman's insistence on adhering to his rule guarantees that Gotham's most dangerous criminals will remain free, ensuring that their reign of terror can continue indefinitely. This paradox becomes more complex. As the years go on, Batman begins to realize that his refusal to kill is allowing the worst of Gotham's criminals to flourish. Rather than solving the problem of crime, Batman's moral absolutism has made it worse, creating a city where the most dangerous criminals are not eliminated, but merely delayed. Gotham's criminal landscape is defined by this vicious cycle. Batman's attempts to stop crime only result in its evolution. Gotham's criminals, as they learn from their encounters with Batman, become increasingly harder to defeat, more unpredictable, and more violent. This makes Batman's role as Gotham's protector increasingly ineffective. What's more, Batman's moral rule creates a situation where the severity of the crimes in Gotham escalates, with Batman unable to truly address the underlying issues. The criminal system in Gotham, like its political system, is broken. Batman's inability to kill allows criminals to exploit the system for their own gain. This leads to a systemic failure, where the law is impotent against the forces of chaos and destruction. While Batman fights on the streets, Gotham's broader societal issues, poverty, corruption, and institutional decay, continue to thrive. Batman's war against crime is one that ironically makes Gotham's problems worse. The long-term effects of this cycle are seen in the rise of more and more extreme criminals. Each villain Batman faces in Gotham not only grows stronger, but more symbolic of the failure of Batman's moral code. The Joker, the most prominent example of a villain exploiting Batman's rules, grows in power every time he escapes Batman's grasp. This is not just a game for the Joker. It's a war on Batman's very sense of self. The Joker wants Batman to kill him. That is the ultimate test of Batman's willpower, the ultimate test of his humanity. But Batman, unable to break his moral code, becomes a prisoner to the Joker's manipulations. Each time Batman faces the Joker, he is forced to confront the dark side of his own psyche, the side that craves vengeance, the side that wants to end the madness. But Batman's refusal to kill ensures that the Joker is allowed to continue wreaking havoc, pushing Batman to the breaking point. But the Joker is not the only one who benefits from Batman's no-kill rule. Villains like Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Bane all take advantage of the fact that Batman will never eliminate them. These criminals operate in the shadows, constantly testing Batman's resolve, knowing that no matter how many times they are defeated, Batman will not take the necessary steps to ensure they are gone for good. The rules Batman imposes on himself are used against him. Instead of being a force of stability in Gotham, Batman's moral code has created a city where the worst criminals are allowed to continue their reign of terror. This raises another important question. What is justice and what is vengeance? Batman's no-kill rule is often portrayed as a measure of justice, the idea that even the worst criminals deserve to live, that no one should have the right to take a life. However, when viewed in the context of Gotham's criminal underworld, this idea of justice begins to erode. Is justice really served by letting criminals like the Joker and Bane continue to operate with impunity? Batman's refusal to kill is in fact a form of vengeance. It is a way for him to ensure that he never becomes the thing he hates, a killer. But in doing so, he fails to recognize that the very criminals he seeks to stop are the product of a city that has failed to protect its people. A city where crime is the result of decades of systemic issues, not just the actions of a few bad individuals. In Gotham, there is no justice without consequences. Batman's no-kill rule denies the possibility of immediate consequences for the most dangerous criminals. Gotham's worst are allowed to continue their reign because Batman refuses to do what is necessary to stop them. The lack of finality, the refusal to take decisive action, allows the most dangerous criminals to keep coming back, more dangerous and more powerful than before. As Gotham continues to be ravaged by crime, it becomes clear that Batman's moral code, while well-intentioned, is not the answer. Gotham cannot be saved by someone who refuses to take the necessary steps to end the cycle. Gotham needs more than just a protector. It needs someone who can make the hard decisions and face the reality of what is required to bring about lasting change. Furthermore, Batman's no-kill rule is also psychologically damaging to himself. Batman's refusal to kill does not come from a place of healing or redemption. It comes from a place of fear. Fear of becoming the very thing he hates. Fear of losing his humanity. Fear of losing control. This fear, rather than being the catalyst for his strength, is what has caused his psychological collapse. Every time Batman refuses to kill, he reinforces his personal trauma. The trauma of the loss of his parents, the trauma of the violence that shaped him, the trauma that has never been properly processed or healed. His refusal to kill is a way of avoiding the deeper emotional work he needs to do, a way of suppressing the anger and grief that he cannot bear to confront. What's more, Batman's obsessive need to maintain control is slowly eroding his capacity to connect with others. He has pushed away every person who has ever tried to help him: Alfred, Robin, Batgirl, and even Commissioner Gordon. These people care for him, but Batman's inability to trust them and let them share in the burden of Gotham's protection has left him alone, isolated in his crusade. His no-kill rule has caused him to separate himself from the human aspects of his life, pushing away the relationships that could help him heal, that could allow him to live as more than just Batman. Batman's refusal to kill is often portrayed as the pinnacle of his moral integrity. His steadfast adherence to this principle defines him as a hero who has not lost his humanity, who remains above the corrupting influence of the very criminals he battles. However, the deeper truth is more complicated. Batman's no-kill rule is not so much a display of his adherence to high moral standards as it is an attempt to resist the inner darkness that threatens to consume him. At its core, the rule represents Batman's fear of becoming the very thing he despises. His traumatic past, the brutal murder of his parents, left him with a deep-seated belief that all crime must be punished, but that to kill would compromise his very essence. His goal is not just to defeat crime, it's to save Gotham while retaining his own soul. However, this fear-driven moral absolutism has a profoundly negative impact on Gotham. In his obsession with not killing, Batman has essentially tied his hands, limiting his ability to deal with the criminal chaos in a city that has evolved far beyond the scope of his original mission. Gotham's criminal landscape is not static. It constantly evolves, adapts, and becomes more dangerous in response to Batman's presence. The city's most dangerous criminals, such as the Joker, Bane, and Ra's al Ghul, have all grown more potent because they know that Batman will never kill them, no matter what havoc they wreak. The criminals, in turn, escalate their actions, becoming more violent, more unpredictable, and more dangerous with each encounter. Rather than eliminating the threat, Batman's refusal to kill has allowed the city's criminals to thrive and regenerate, creating an endless cycle of chaos that Batman can never hope to stop. The Joker, more than any other villain, epitomizes the consequences of Batman's moral code. The Joker is not simply a criminal. He is the ultimate representation of chaos. While Batman seeks to impose order through his strict moral code, the Joker delights in breaking that order, testing Batman's limits. The Joker's actions are not about gaining power or wealth. They are about pushing Batman to the edge of his principles. The Joker is acutely aware that Batman cannot kill him, and that knowledge empowers him. Each time Batman confronts the Joker tests him further, pushing him toward the breaking point where the rules no longer matter. In a way, the Joker has become the embodiment of Batman's greatest fear, that he will be unable to maintain his humanity in the face of Gotham's overwhelming evil. This dynamic is one of the most tragic aspects of Batman's existence. By refusing to kill the Joker, Batman inadvertently allows the Joker to continue his reign of terror, making the city more dangerous each time the Joker escapes. Gotham citizens suffer the consequences of this moral code as they are continuously put in harm's way by a criminal who cannot be stopped by conventional means. In his attempt to avoid becoming a murderer, Batman becomes the enabler of Gotham's most dangerous villain. Rather than ending the problem, Batman's refusal to kill has allowed the problem to grow more complex and severe with each passing year. His moral code, once meant to define his heroism, has become the tool of Gotham's destruction. The cyclical nature of Gotham's crime is largely driven by Batman's no-kill rule. When Batman apprehends criminals, he sends them to Arkham Asylum or Gotham's penal system. But the city's criminal justice system is so fundamentally broken that it cannot effectively deal with them. Gotham's corrupt political systems, fractured institutions, and overwhelmed criminal justice system make it impossible for Batman's efforts to produce lasting peace. Batman's approach to justice is based on short-term measures. He stops a crime, apprehends a criminal, but fails to address the root causes of Gotham's corruption. His refusal to eliminate the most dangerous criminals from the equation allows them to escape again and again, growing more powerful each time. Gotham's criminals are not just individuals. They are a product of the city's institutional failure. Batman's no-kill rule ensures that they will always return, perpetuating the cycle of crime, violence, and corruption that defines Gotham. Gotham's ability to reform is hindered not just by the criminals it harbors, but by Batman's failure to confront the systemic issues at play. Gotham needs not just a vigilant protector, but a reform of its institutions. Instead of working with the police or the political system to make lasting changes, Batman operates outside the law, fighting criminals on his own terms, but never addressing the problems of governance, social inequality, or the breakdown of community. By refusing to kill, Batman adheres to a moral code that does not align with the needs of the city. He sees himself as the sole arbiter of justice, but this belief prevents him from recognizing the importance of working with the system to create long-term solutions. Gotham's deep-seated corruption cannot be eradicated by one man, and the criminals Batman faces cannot be contained simply by arresting them. Gotham needs Batman to evolve, to acknowledge that sometimes, to truly protect Gotham, extreme measures are necessary. The repeated failures of Gotham's criminal justice system are another critical element in the argument that Batman's no-kill rule does more harm than good. Gotham's prisons, particularly Arkham Asylum, are notoriously ineffective at holding dangerous criminals. The failures of these institutions reinforce the idea that Batman's moral code is deeply flawed. He may stop individual criminals temporarily, but the system that allows them to escape, a broken and corrupt system, remains unchallenged. Instead of eliminating the root cause of Gotham's crime, the systemic failures that enable it, Batman's rule forces him to continually fight against criminals who are able to evolve and outsmart him. Gotham's problems are not just the result of criminal behavior, they are the result of a city that is trapped in cycles of poverty, corruption, and neglect. Batman's refusal to take extreme action ensures that these cycles continue. In fact, the very act of sending criminals like the Joker to Arkham Asylum represents a failure of Gotham's system of justice. The prison system is ill-equipped to handle Gotham's most dangerous criminals, and the lack of accountability in Gotham's institutions ensures that these criminals will always return. By choosing not to kill, Batman reinforces the idea that Gotham's systems of incarceration and justice are the proper channels for dealing with criminals, even though these systems are incapable of dealing with the severity of the threat Gotham faces. This allows the criminal element to continually regenerate, making Gotham a city that cannot escape its own corruption. What makes Batman's moral code so dangerous is that it escalates the violence in Gotham. The more Batman fights crime, the more violent the criminals become, and the more vicious the cycle of violence grows. The villains in Gotham, particularly those that Batman faces on a regular basis, are not just trying to steal or gain power, they are trying to break Batman's code. The Joker, for example, does not want to simply destroy Gotham. He wants to destroy Batman's belief that he can maintain moral purity. The Joker's ultimate goal is to push Batman to the point where his rule, his moral compass, becomes irrelevant. As the Joker's crimes become more heinous and violent, Batman is forced to confront the fact that the very rules he clings to are no longer viable in the face of the overwhelming chaos and brutality of Gotham's criminals. Batman's refusal to kill is the thing that allows Gotham's most dangerous criminals to keep coming back. They know that no matter how violent or chaotic they get, Batman will never cross that line. And so, they escalate their violence, becoming more dangerous with each encounter, while Batman is stuck in a loop where his hands are tied by his moral absolutism. This escalation is particularly evident in the rise of Bane. Bane is not just a physical threat. He is an intellectual one. He knows how to break Batman both physically and psychologically. By attacking Batman's city, breaking his body, and demonstrating the vulnerability of Batman's moral code, Bane forces Batman into a position where his no-kill rule becomes his greatest weakness. Batman is forced to grapple with the fact that the criminals he faces are growing stronger, and his failure to adapt to these new threats is a direct result of his refusal to consider extreme measures. Gotham's criminals grow more dangerous because Batman's inability to break his moral code allows them to exploit his weaknesses. What makes Batman's moral code so dangerous is that it escalates the violence in Gotham. The more Batman fights crime, the more violent the criminals become, and the more vicious the cycle of violence grows. The villains in Gotham, particularly those that Batman faces on a regular basis, are not just trying to steal or gain power, they are trying to break Batman's code. The Joker, for example, does not want to simply destroy Gotham. He wants to destroy Batman's belief that he can maintain moral purity. The Joker's ultimate goal is to push Batman to the point where his rule, his moral compass, becomes irrelevant. As the Joker's crimes become more heinous and violent, Batman is forced to confront the fact that the very rules he clings to are no longer viable in the face of the overwhelming chaos and brutality of Gotham's criminals. Batman's refusal to kill is the thing that allows Gotham's most dangerous criminals to keep coming back. They know that no matter how violent or chaotic they get, Batman will never cross that line. And so, they escalate their violence, becoming more dangerous with each encounter, while Batman is stuck in a loop where his hands are tied by his moral absolutism. This escalation is particularly evident in the rise of Bane. Bane is not just a physical threat, he is an intellectual one. He knows how to break Batman, both physically and psychologically. By attacking Batman's city, breaking his body, and demonstrating the vulnerability of Batman's moral code, Bane forces Batman into a position where his no-kill rule becomes his greatest weakness. Batman is forced to grapple with the fact that the criminals he faces are growing stronger, and his failure to adapt to these new threats is a direct result of his refusal to consider extreme measures. Gotham's criminals grow more dangerous because Batman's inability to break his moral code allows them to exploit his weaknesses. What makes Batman's moral code so dangerous is that it escalates the violence in Gotham. The more Batman fights crime, the more violent the criminals become, and the more vicious the cycle of violence grows. The villains in Gotham, particularly those that Batman faces on a regular basis, are not just trying to steal or gain power. They are trying to break Batman's code. The Joker, for example, does not want to simply destroy Gotham. He wants to destroy Batman's belief that he can maintain moral purity. The Joker's ultimate goal is to push Batman to the point where his rule, his moral compass, becomes irrelevant. As the Joker's crimes become more heinous and violent, Batman is forced to confront the fact that the very rules he clings to are no longer viable in the face of the overwhelming chaos and brutality of Gotham's criminals. Batman's refusal to kill is the thing that allows Gotham's most dangerous criminals to keep coming back. They know that no matter how violent or chaotic they get, Batman will never cross that line. And so they escalate their violence, becoming more dangerous with each encounter, while Batman is stuck in a loop where his hands are tied by his moral absolutism. This escalation is particularly evident in the rise of Bane. Bane is not just a physical threat, he is an intellectual one. He knows how to break Batman both physically and psychologically. By attacking Batman's city, breaking his body, and demonstrating the vulnerability of Batman's moral code, Bane forces Batman into a position where his no-kill rule becomes his greatest weakness. Batman is forced to grapple with the fact that the criminals he faces are growing stronger, and his failure to adapt to these new threats is a direct result of his refusal to consider extreme measures. Gotham's criminals grow more dangerous because Batman's inability to break his moral code allows them to exploit his weaknesses. Batman's no-kill rule stands as a cornerstone of his identity, both as a symbol and as the Dark Knight. However, as Gotham's most dangerous criminals rise, adapt, and learn from each encounter with him, it becomes increasingly clear that the rule is not simply a moral choice, but a deeply ingrained principle that has profound consequences, not only for Batman, but for Gotham itself. What began as a symbol of his commitment to justice, to the preservation of life, has transformed into something more insidious. Batman's refusal to take a life has allowed the very criminals he seeks to defeat to grow more powerful, more cunning, and more dangerous. Rather than offering Gotham a path to peace, the rule has perpetuated an endless cycle of violence and fear, one that Batman himself is caught in. The paradox of his position becomes evident. The very thing that is meant to define his humanity, his refusal to kill, has become the thing that traps him, and by extension, Gotham itself. The moral absolutism embedded in Batman's no-kill rule was born from trauma, the loss of his parents, the violence of their deaths, and the vow he made to never let the same tragedy befall anyone else. This vow, made in the wake of deep pain, took on a life of its own. It became Batman's guiding principle, the compass by which he navigates the complex, dark world of Gotham. The promise he made to himself, and to the memory of his parents, was not only to protect the innocent, but to protect his own sense of justice, to avoid becoming the killer he so feared. In his mind, killing would signify a loss of self, a fall into the same moral pit that swallowed the very criminals he hunted. But the reality is that this rule, though it makes Batman a figure of moral purity, is fundamentally flawed in the context of Gotham's ever-escalating violence and the unrelenting criminal underworld. Gotham is a city built on chaos. Its crime syndicates, its political corruption, and its social decay are the perfect breeding grounds for Batman's greatest foes. Batman's war on crime is defined not just by his own personal code, but by a system that fails to address the root causes of the violence. His pursuit of individual criminals is important, but Gotham is too sick, too fractured for such small victories to have any lasting impact. Batman's refusal to kill leaves Gotham trapped in a cycle of constant escalation where villains adapt to Batman's methods, growing increasingly dangerous each time he defeats them. The cycle continues because Batman is unwilling to break it. He insists on doing things his way, sticking to a rigid code that prevents him from making the hard choices necessary to truly heal the city. The most blatant example of how Batman's no-kill rule perpetuates this cycle is the Joker. The Joker is not merely a criminal. He is the embodiment of chaos, a force of nature that exists to challenge Batman's very existence. For the Joker, Batman's refusal to kill is not a moral victory. It is his greatest weakness. The Joker understands that Batman's code of conduct will never allow him to take the final step. This gives the Joker an almost unlimited amount of power over Batman. Each time the Joker is caught, Batman faces the same dilemma: can he truly defeat a force of chaos by playing by the rules? The answer is no. Every time Batman captures the Joker, he does so knowing that the Joker will escape, knowing that his inability to kill guarantees that this cycle of madness will never end. The Joker knows this, and so he plays with Batman, testing his resolve, trying to break him psychologically. This dynamic between Batman and the Joker is a perpetual war, one that will never truly end because Batman is bound by his own code. The Joker, in his mind, has won the battle even before it begins. The Joker's role is not to win, but to prove that Batman's moral absolutism is flawed. The Joker is trying to push Batman to the point where his refusal to kill is no longer an option. He wants Batman to break his code, to become the killer he despises. But the more Batman fights against this, the more he becomes defined by the rule he created. In his attempt to maintain his humanity, Batman is ironically becoming more monstrous. The Joker's endless ability to escape and continue his rampage is a direct result of Batman's refusal to end the problem once and for all. The Joker can continue wreaking havoc precisely because Batman will not do what is necessary to stop him, kill him. The consequences of this failure extend beyond the Joker. Batman's refusal to kill has created an environment in Gotham where the worst criminals are allowed to thrive. Gotham's criminals are becoming more dangerous, more organized, and more ruthless because they know that Batman will never kill them. They learn from their encounters with Batman. Instead of being cowed into submission, they adapt to his methods, making it harder for him to stop them each time they return. Bane, for example, is a brilliant strategist who understands that the only way to defeat Batman is to break him mentally and physically, to force him to question the value of his moral code. Bane does not just defeat Batman in a physical battle. He exposes the limitations of Batman's approach to justice. By pushing Batman to the edge, Bane forces Batman to confront the fact that his rules, his no-kill rule, his refusal to allow others to share the burden of Gotham's protection, are the things that hold him back. Batman is not only fighting criminals, he is fighting himself. The no-kill rule makes him weaker, less adaptable, and less capable of dealing with Gotham's ever-evolving threats. In addition to criminals like the Joker and Bane, there are also the smaller yet significant criminals who Batman deals with on a regular basis. Two-Face, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, and countless others. These characters, while often less extreme than the Joker or Bane, are no less dangerous to Gotham. They represent the fractured psyche of Gotham itself. Criminals who are both a result of the city's systemic issues and a manifestation of Batman's own inability to bring real change. Each time Batman apprehends one of these criminals, he does so knowing that he has not solved Gotham's core issues. They will escape, or they will return, and the problems they represent will remain, like wounds that never heal. Batman's no-kill rule ensures that Gotham's crime syndicates and their leaders will continue to operate with little more than temporary interruptions. The deeper systemic issues in Gotham, poverty, corruption, lack of opportunity, are never addressed. They remain because Batman is only addressing the symptoms of crime, not the disease itself. In this way, Batman's no-kill rule becomes not just a moral issue, but a systemic one. Gotham's police force, its criminal justice system, and its political leadership are all deeply flawed. Gotham cannot be saved by one man alone. Yet Batman's refusal to kill and his insistence on working outside the system creates a situation where Gotham's broader issues go unaddressed. The police cannot do what Batman does, and Batman refuses to work with them, further alienating himself from the very system that could help him bring real change to Gotham. By refusing to kill, Batman locks himself into a one-man battle that cannot solve the city's problems. He needs more than just a moral code. He needs a strategy for systemic reform, a way to work with the very institutions he criticizes. But his no-kill rule prevents him from doing this. He cannot see that his approach, while noble, is not enough to heal Gotham. What this reveals is that Batman's moral absolutism is not just a flaw in his approach to justice, it is a flaw in his understanding of the nature of Gotham's problems. Gotham is not simply a place where crime exists because of evil individuals. It is a city defined by systemic problems, a city where crime is the result of inequality, a broken legal system, and the systemic failure of its political and economic structures. Batman's failure to see this larger picture means that he is stuck fighting the same battles over and over, never truly making a difference. Gotham needs Batman to work with others, to trust others, and to find ways to address the root causes of crime. But his refusal to kill, and his belief that he alone must fight the battle, means that Gotham will never escape its cycle of suffering. As much as Batman believes that his refusal to kill is a noble choice, it is, in fact, a tragedy. Gotham needs more than just a protector. It needs a leader capable of addressing the deeper issues that allow crime to flourish. Batman's no-kill rule, while keeping him morally above reproach, has made him ineffective. Gotham's problems cannot be solved by one man acting outside of the law. They need to be confronted through systemic change, through the rebuilding of the social and political structures that have failed. Batman's refusal to kill perpetuates a cycle of violence that only serves to make Gotham worse, ensuring that Gotham's criminals continue to grow more powerful, more dangerous, and more entrenched in the city's fabric. Batman's moral code, though it may preserve his humanity, ultimately traps him in a perpetual struggle that prevents Gotham from ever healing. The more Batman's no-kill rule is examined, the clearer it becomes that Gotham as a city is suffering under the weight of this moral constraint. While Batman's refusal to kill remains a core aspect of his identity and a symbol of his desire to remain distinct from the very criminals he opposes, it is ultimately a moral code that has allowed Gotham's problems to persist and even grow worse. The cycle of escalating crime, the rise of more dangerous villains, and Gotham's inability to truly heal all stem from this unyielding rule. The primary consequence of Batman's no-kill rule is that it creates a permanent power vacuum in Gotham. Each time Batman captures a criminal but does not kill them, he essentially ensures that they will return. Gotham's most dangerous criminals, including the Joker, Bane, and Ra's al Ghul, exploit this cycle of capture and release. They have learned over time that their battles with Batman are not final, they are merely temporary setbacks. Gotham's criminals do not fear the consequences of being captured because they know that no matter how violent or destructive their actions are, Batman will not kill them. This knowledge gives them power over Batman and over Gotham itself. As Batman grows more desperate to maintain control over the city, his moral rigidity creates an environment where criminals only grow more dangerous. The Joker, who is perhaps Batman's greatest foe, exemplifies this dynamic. The Joker represents chaos in its purest form, an unpredictable, uncontrollable force that thrives on Batman's inability to take the most extreme measures. While Batman continuously seeks to restore order to Gotham, the Joker's goal is to destroy that order completely. The Joker wants to show Batman that his moral code, his insistence on not killing, is a lie, a fragile illusion that can be shattered. Every time Batman captures the Joker, he places him in Arkham Asylum where the Joker knows he will inevitably escape. The Joker thrives on Batman's inability to break his own moral code. He pushes Batman further and further, trying to force him into a position where he must confront the question, can justice really be served without killing? Each time Batman lets the Joker escape, each time the Joker wreaks havoc on Gotham, he strengthens his grip on the city. And Batman, who is bound by his code, can do little more than apprehend him again, only for the cycle to repeat itself. This dynamic is not limited to the Joker. Bane, a character who thrives on Batman's psychological and physical vulnerabilities, takes full advantage of Batman's adherence to the no-kill rule. Bane's plot is not just about taking control of Gotham, it is about breaking Batman's spirit. When Bane forces Batman into submission, physically breaking his back and psychologically shattering him, he exposes the ultimate weakness in Batman's approach. Batman cannot allow himself to take extreme actions to end the threat permanently. Instead of recognizing the need to eliminate the dangers that Gotham faces, Batman's no-kill rule forces him into a defensive position where he must continually fight back rather than end the threat once and for all. Bane's victory isn't just physical, it's psychological. Bane's success in breaking Batman proves that Batman's moral code has its limits. It is not just an issue of physical power. It is a matter of Batman's inability to make the hard choices necessary to secure Gotham's future. Even when faced with these extreme threats, Batman's refusal to kill continues to have a profound effect on Gotham's citizens. Gotham is a city defined by fear, and Batman, despite his efforts, has not been able to overcome the fear that grips it. The criminals Batman faces are manifestations of this fear. The Joker, Bane, Two-Face, and many others are not just individual villains. They are products of Gotham's systemic corruption, social inequality, and institutional failure. Batman's struggle to stop them is not just a fight against evil individuals, but a fight against the very nature of the city. Batman's no-kill rule reinforces the idea that Gotham is incapable of solving its own problems. Rather than working within the system to create long-term solutions, Batman operates outside of it, essentially bypassing the institutions that could help Gotham reform. The inability of Gotham's criminal justice system to effectively manage its most dangerous criminals is a direct consequence of Batman's actions. While Batman continues to work alone, fighting crime on his own terms, Gotham's institutions, its police force, its courts, its penal system, are left to deal with the fallout. Gotham's criminals, such as the Joker and Bane, continue to manipulate the system because it is inherently flawed. Arkham Asylum, for example, is a revolving door for Gotham's worst criminals. It is a place where the insane can be locked away, but not truly treated or rehabilitated. This broken system ensures that Gotham's criminals are never truly removed from the city. They return time and time again, and Batman, despite his best efforts, can only stop them temporarily. The real solution to Gotham's crime problem requires more than just vigilante justice. It requires the rebuilding of the systems that allow criminals to thrive. But Batman, bound by his no-kill rule, fails to address the root causes of Gotham's crime. His fight is with the symptoms of the problem, not the problem itself. Gotham is a city plagued by poverty, corruption, and inequality, all factors that contribute to its pervasive criminal activity. Batman's attempts to stop crime from the outside only address the individual criminals who rise to the top, rather than focusing on the systemic issues that perpetuate crime on a larger scale. Gotham needs institutional reform, but Batman's insistence on fighting crime as a solitary figure limits his ability to engage with the city's core issues. His refusal to kill criminals, while well-intentioned, has created a situation where the city remains stuck in a perpetual state of dysfunction. Gotham will never change unless Batman realizes that he cannot fight this battle alone. One of the most telling examples of this is Batman's relationship with the Gotham City Police Department. The police force, like the city itself, is deeply corrupt. The officers that Batman works alongside are often as dangerous and morally compromised as the criminals they are supposed to arrest. This corruption prevents the police from being an effective force for justice in the city. Batman, instead of working with the police to address this corruption, distances himself from the system. He operates outside of it, working alone in the shadows. This only deepens Gotham's problems. Batman's refusal to trust the police and his decision to work outside the law reinforces the idea that Gotham cannot be saved by the system, that only Batman's individual efforts can make a difference. This ultimately ensures that the system will continue to fail, and Gotham's criminals will continue to exploit its weaknesses. Gotham's future is also impacted by Batman's refusal to kill. Batman, while fighting crime, has allowed Gotham to continue in a state of moral ambiguity. He operates as a symbol of justice, but this symbol is one that exists above the law. He has created a narrative where the idea of justice is warped, where the pursuit of justice comes at the expense of the greater good. His refusal to take the most extreme measures ensures that the moral cost of every decision he makes is borne by the citizens of Gotham. Gotham's criminals are not the only victims of Batman's moral code. The citizens too suffer. The people of Gotham live in a constant state of fear with no real resolution to the city's problems. Batman's refusal to kill ensures that Gotham remains locked in a perpetual state of violence and insecurity where no real solutions are put forward. The more Batman's fight drags on, the more his humanity begins to erode. His refusal to kill has forced him into a battle with his own sense of morality, with his very sense of self. Batman's obsession with remaining above reproach, with never becoming the thing he despises, has led him to ignore the realities of the world around him. He believes that by refusing to kill, he can maintain his humanity, but in doing so, he has become less human. His emotional isolation, his obsession with justice, and his refusal to let others in have made him a hollow figure. Batman no longer acts out of empathy or the desire to protect his fellow man. He acts out of fear. Fear of becoming a killer. Fear of losing himself. Gotham needs more than a man driven by fear. It needs a man who can trust others, who can acknowledge the limitations of his mission, and who can act decisively when needed. The psychological toll of Batman's no-kill rule is perhaps most clearly seen in his relationship with Alfred. Alfred has been Batman's constant companion, his caretaker, his moral compass. But Alfred, over time, has grown disillusioned with Batman's mission. Alfred recognizes the toll that Batman's refusal to kill has taken on him. Alfred sees the man he once raised, the boy who wanted to heal Gotham, slowly deteriorating into something cold and detached, a figure who cannot connect with the very people he wants to protect. The more Batman isolates himself, the more he becomes a symbol of fear rather than hope. Alfred, once Batman's guiding light, has now become a bystander, watching as Batman's moral code chips away at his soul. As Batman continues down this path, his no-kill rule has far-reaching consequences for Gotham's future. The city remains trapped in a cycle of crime, corruption, and violence because Batman refuses to take the extreme actions necessary to stop it. Gotham cannot heal until Batman acknowledges that sometimes, to protect the city, the hard decisions must be made. The no-kill rule, while preserving Batman's personal code, keeps him from recognizing that Gotham's true healing can only come through systemic reform and collaborative action. Batman's moral code has become a tragedy that traps both him and the city in an endless struggle with no end in sight. Gotham's criminal underworld grows stronger with every villain Batman faces. The cycle of escalation continues as Batman's moral code allows Gotham's most dangerous criminals to evolve and adapt. Gotham needs Batman to understand that true justice lies not in rigid rules, but in the ability to adapt, evolve, and make the tough choices. Let me know if you'd like to dive deeper into specific aspects of Batman's moral code, his relationships, or the systemic issues within Gotham. There are many layers to explore when it comes to the complex consequences of Batman's refusal to kill. As we continue to explore the consequences of Batman's no-kill rule, we start to delve into the wider psychological and philosophical implications of this code, not only for Batman but for Gotham as a whole. Batman's adherence to the moral principle of not killing a criminal has created a perpetual state of chaos in Gotham, where Gotham's criminals become more dangerous with each encounter. Gotham's systemic issues are only exacerbated by Batman's solitary battle against crime, as he fights to uphold a code that, while well-intentioned, traps him in a cycle of violence that prevents Gotham from achieving lasting peace. While Batman's mission to protect Gotham is driven by noble intentions, it is increasingly clear that his moral absolutism is a significant obstacle. The city needs more than just a protector who refuses to kill. It needs a leader who can understand the complexities of justice. Someone willing to make the hard decisions that others are unwilling or unable to make. Batman's refusal to kill has turned him into a symbol, not of hope, but of inaction, of someone who cannot make the difficult choices necessary to ensure Gotham's future. One of the key psychological consequences of Batman's no-kill rule is his growing emotional isolation. Batman's moral code, while designed to maintain his humanity, has instead created a deep rift between himself and the people he's trying to protect. Gotham's citizens, who initially see Batman as a savior, begin to view him as an untouchable figure who is above them. Batman's refusal to connect with others emotionally, his detachment from the very people he fights to protect, creates a barrier that prevents Gotham from healing. Batman's moral code is not just a defense against the criminals he faces, it is a defense against the pain of his past. By refusing to kill, Batman ensures that he remains locked in a state of emotional stasis, unable to move forward or form meaningful relationships. This emotional isolation is especially evident in Batman's relationships with Alfred, Robin, and even Commissioner Gordon. Alfred, the father figure who raised Bruce Wayne, has spent years trying to guide him toward a path of healing. Yet Batman continuously pushes him away, refusing to let him help in any meaningful way. Alfred's attempts to reach Batman often fall on deaf ears as Bruce becomes consumed by his mission. The trauma of his parents' deaths remains a weight he cannot lift, and his no-kill rule is both his shield and his prison. Alfred is left to watch as the man he raised slowly deteriorates, unable to intervene in a meaningful way. In Batman's quest to protect Gotham, he has alienated the very person who would do anything to help him heal. Similarly, Batman's relationship with Robin is emblematic of his fear of trusting others. When Robin first joins Batman, he does so as an equal, a partner in the fight against Gotham's criminal underworld. Yet over time, Batman grows increasingly controlling, believing that only he can handle the responsibility of protecting Gotham. Robin, despite his skills and abilities, is never allowed to take on the same level of responsibility as Batman. This creates a dynamic in which Batman uses Robin not as a partner but as a tool to further his mission. This inability to see Robin as an equal, to trust him with the same weight that Batman carries, reinforces Batman's emotional isolation. He cannot open himself up to others because he believes that he alone must bear the burden of Gotham's protection. This same control is seen in Batman's interactions with Commissioner Gordon, who, despite his loyalty to Batman, is often relegated to a secondary role in Gotham's battle against crime. Gordon, like Robin and Alfred, is a capable ally, but Batman's refusal to trust the institutions around him, including the police force, prevents him from building a collaborative approach to Gotham's problems. The more Batman operates outside the law, the more he isolates himself from those who could offer help, ensuring that the city remains in a state of constant turmoil. The failure of Gotham's law enforcement and political systems is not just a reflection of the city's decay, it is a reflection of Batman's refusal to work with those who could help him. Batman's no-kill rule, his insistence on working alone, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, one that ensures Gotham's suffering will continue. The failure to see the bigger picture. One of the most critical aspects of Batman's no-kill rule is that it prevents him from seeing the bigger picture. Gotham's problems are not just the result of bad individuals, they are the result of a broken system. Gotham's criminal underworld thrives on the city's social, economic, and political decay, and Batman's attempts to fight crime through individual acts of vengeance do little to address the deeper causes of this suffering. Gotham is a city where criminals rise to power, not just because of their own ambitions, but because of the systemic failures that make it impossible for the law to hold them accountable. Batman's war against crime is a battle against symptoms, not causes. He treats the effects of Gotham's broken systems, crime, corruption, and violence, but he fails to address the root causes. Batman's refusal to kill also blinds him to the fact that not every criminal can be rehabilitated. Gotham's most dangerous criminals are not just mentally ill individuals who need to be locked away. They are symbols of the city's rottenness, of a system that allows them to operate unchecked. The Joker, for instance, is not someone who can be fixed by therapy or time in prison. His brand of madness is not one that can be solved through conventional means. He is a force of destruction, and in many ways, Batman's failure to eliminate him represents Gotham's failure to confront its true problems. By refusing to kill criminals like the Joker, Batman perpetuates a false sense of justice. The idea that all criminals can be rehabilitated, that all problems can be solved through the legal system. This idea ignores the fact that some problems, especially in a city as corrupt as Gotham, require radical action. The truth is, Gotham's corruption is so deeply ingrained that no one person can solve it alone. Batman's no-kill rule, while it preserves his moral purity, limits his ability to make the hard choices necessary to truly stop Gotham's criminals. As Batman's rogues gallery grows stronger, Gotham itself grows weaker. Batman's refusal to kill criminals like the Joker ensures that Gotham will never be rid of the violence and chaos they bring. Batman's war on crime is not a sustainable solution. Gotham needs a broader, more comprehensive solution, one that involves working with the people, the police, and the institutions that can help reform the city. By refusing to kill, Batman is essentially locking himself into a self-perpetuating battle that he cannot win. Gotham will never change as long as it is held hostage by Batman's moral code. The cost of obsession and the loss of humanity. At its core, Batman's no-kill rule is driven by a fear of losing himself. His parents' deaths were the catalyst for his transformation into Batman, and the emotional scar left by that tragedy has shaped his worldview. Batman's rule to never kill stems from the belief that he must not become the thing he hates. He must not be the killer, the one who takes lives without remorse. But in his relentless pursuit of justice, Batman has lost sight of the very humanity he sought to protect. His obsession with upholding his code, with preventing himself from crossing the line, has turned him into a figure defined by fear. He fears becoming the monster he fights against, but in doing so he has become something else entirely. A man unable to live a full life, a man incapable of love, of connection, of growth. Batman's no-kill rule, rather than preserving his humanity, has hollowed him out. He isolates himself from the very people who care about him, pushing them away in order to maintain his moral purity. His refusal to let go of his past, his refusal to forgive those who have hurt him, has prevented him from ever truly healing. Gotham's citizens may look up to him as a symbol of justice, but in reality, Batman is a broken man, a man who cannot reconcile his pain with the world around him. By refusing to take the extreme actions necessary to stop Gotham's crime, Batman remains locked in a cycle of vengeance that only deepens his emotional wounds. His no-kill rule, while it may preserve his ideals, ensures that he will never truly heal, that he will never be able to move forward and live a life beyond the mission that consumes him. As Gotham's problems grow more complex, Batman becomes more entrenched in his own psychological struggle. His fear of killing, His need for control and his isolation prevent him from seeing the reality of the situation. Gotham is not a city that can be saved through moral purity alone. It requires reform, collaboration, and a willingness to confront the systemic issues that perpetuate crime. Batman's obsession with control, with doing everything on his own terms, is preventing Gotham from healing, from finding the kind of long-term peace that could stop the cycle of violence. Gotham needs more than just a protector. It needs a leader who can collaborate, who can trust others, and who can see that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that break the rules. Gotham's criminal ecosystem thrives on the power vacuum created by Batman's unwillingness to act decisively. The most dangerous criminals in Gotham, from the Joker to Bane to Ra's al Ghul, have all exploited Batman's refusal to kill. These criminals are not merely motivated by personal gain. They are aware that Batman cannot go the distance. He cannot kill them. This knowledge gives them an immense amount of power. They understand that no matter how much havoc they wreak, Batman will not take the final step to eliminate them for good. And this is a significant part of the problem. Gotham's most dangerous figures are not just criminals. They are symptoms of the deep systemic issues within the city. And Batman's refusal to cross the line of lethal force has created a situation where Gotham's citizens are perpetually at risk. The Joker is the perfect example of how Batman's moral code has allowed the chaos to continue. The Joker is not motivated by wealth or revenge. He is motivated by anarchy. The Joker's ultimate goal is to break Batman, to expose the fragility of his moral code, to show him that order cannot be maintained without crossing boundaries. The Joker understands that as long as Batman adheres to the no-kill rule, he can continue to create chaos without fear of permanent consequences. Each time Batman captures the Joker, he locks him away in Arkham Asylum, where the Joker always escapes, proving that Batman's moral code, rather than stopping the problem, only prolongs it. The Joker is a reflection of Batman's internal conflict. The villain's ability to escape time and again demonstrates that Gotham's greatest threat is not a criminal. It is a flawed system. Batman's refusal to kill means that Gotham's criminals are continually allowed to exist, thrive, and reappear, stronger than before. The same is true for Bane, who tests Batman both physically and mentally. Bane's plot is not just to break Batman physically, but to show him that his moral code is a weakness. Bane understands that Batman is a product of his rules. He knows that by pushing Batman to his limits, by forcing him to physically break, Batman will have to confront his own limitations. Bane's success in breaking Batman and taking control of Gotham exposes just how vulnerable Batman's moral code really is. It highlights that while Batman has been obsessed with justice, his refusal to kill creates an environment where his adversaries can learn from their mistakes and adapt. Bane's ability to break Batman both physically and emotionally is a direct result of the fact that Batman is unable to take extreme measures. By adhering to his no-kill rule, Batman makes himself vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation by those who are willing to do what he refuses. Gotham's greatest criminal threat is not just Bane's power, but Batman's inability to confront the scale of violence and chaos that Gotham is facing. Bane's attack isn't simply a victory. It's a warning. Batman's approach to Gotham's crime problem is deeply flawed, and in some cases counterproductive. Batman's moral code also prevents him from addressing the bigger systemic issues within Gotham. Gotham's problems go beyond the reach of any one man or vigilante. The city's corruption runs deep, with its police force and political structures perpetuating the very systems of crime. Batman is fighting against Batman's isolated war on crime only treats the symptoms of the city's ailments. By fighting individual criminals without addressing the corruption at the heart of Gotham, Batman ensures that the cycle of crime continues, creating a vicious loop that Batman cannot break. Gotham's police and political systems are often as corrupt as the criminals Batman faces, and by refusing to engage with them, by operating outside of the law, Batman ensures that these systemic issues remain unaddressed. Gotham needs institutional reform, not just vigilante justice, but Batman, in his obsession with being the sole protector of the city, fails to see the broader picture. His no-kill rule keeps him from collaborating with the people who could help him address Gotham's deep-rooted issues. This creates a paradox for Gotham's future. Gotham's most dangerous criminals, from the Joker to Bane to Ra's al Ghul, continue to return because Batman's refusal to kill them prevents them from being permanently eradicated. Gotham's criminal justice system, already broken and corrupt, cannot deal with these criminals because it lacks the capacity and power to do so. Batman's no-kill rule reinforces this dysfunction, as criminals are sent to Arkham Asylum, where they are temporarily contained only to escape and continue their rampage. Batman is fighting a battle that cannot be won. The city is too corrupt, the problems too ingrained, for Batman's individual efforts to make a difference. His moral code is ultimately a hindrance, preventing him from taking the extreme actions necessary to end the cycle. Gotham will never be safe as long as Batman is stuck in his own moral paralysis, refusing to act in ways that could solve the deeper issues. What is especially tragic about Batman's situation is that, despite his extraordinary abilities and determination, he cannot see that he is part of the problem. His refusal to kill reflects his fear of losing control, his fear of becoming a killer, but that very fear prevents him from making the decisions necessary to stop the violence in Gotham. Batman believes that justice can be served by adhering to his personal moral code, but in doing so, he misses the larger moral picture. The truth is, Gotham's problems are not simply about good versus evil, justice versus crime. They are about a city that is systemically broken, a city that has created these criminals, a city that continues to allow corruption to thrive. Batman's no-kill rule perpetuates the cycle of violence and dysfunction in Gotham because it ignores the root causes of the city's problems. Furthermore, Batman's emotional isolation makes it nearly impossible for him to form the relationships necessary to make real change. His unwillingness to trust others, his refusal to share the burden of Gotham's protection with anyone else, prevents him from building the alliances that could help him reform the city. Alfred, Robin, and Commissioner Gordon all want to help Batman, but Batman's emotional distance and his refusal to let them in means they are unable to make a significant difference. Alfred, in particular, has seen Bruce Wayne grow colder and more distant over the years. Alfred is perhaps the only person who understands the man behind the mask, but even he cannot break through Batman's emotional walls. Batman's inability to heal, to trust, and to connect with others ensures that Gotham remains a city of fear and dysfunction. His no-kill rule is not just a moral boundary, it is a psychological one that locks him in a battle he cannot win. Gotham needs a leader who is not just morally pure, but who understands the complexities of its problems. Batman, in his efforts to remain clean and above the law, has made himself unable to see that sometimes the best way to protect the city is to confront its darkness head-on. Gotham's criminals will not be defeated by Batman's moral code. They will be defeated when Gotham's institutions are reformed, when the corruption and inequality that fuel crime are addressed. Batman's no-kill rule, instead of preserving his humanity, has trapped him in an endless war, one that he cannot win alone. Gotham needs more than a vigilante who follows a rigid moral code. It needs a leader who can work within the system, who can build coalitions, and who can adapt to the city's changing needs. As long as Batman's no-kill rule continues to dominate his actions, Gotham will remain in a state of perpetual chaos, with Batman constantly fighting the same battles over and over again. The villains will continue to rise, and the system will continue to fail. Batman's moral code may have defined him in the past, but in the context of Gotham's needs, it is increasingly clear that his refusal to kill is the very thing that is keeping Gotham trapped in its endless cycle of crime and suffering. Gotham does not need Batman's rigid adherence to a moral code. It needs a man who can make the hard decisions, who can act with pragmatism and wisdom, rather than adhering to an ideal that cannot be realized in a city as broken as Gotham. As we delve even further into the complexities of Batman's no-kill rule, it becomes evident that this moral stance has not only shaped his persona, but has become a driving force behind Gotham's enduring suffering. Despite Batman's intentions to uphold justice without compromising his humanity, his refusal to kill perpetuates an endless cycle that leaves Gotham teetering on the edge of collapse. The city's criminals, emboldened by Batman's reluctance to take extreme action, grow stronger with each encounter, while Gotham's institutions remain broken and corrupt, unable to keep pace with the escalating threats Batman faces. What was meant to be a shield for Batman's sense of morality has inadvertently become his greatest weakness, making it impossible for him to break free from the cycle of violence that defines both his existence and Gotham's grim fate. To fully understand the repercussions of Batman's refusal to kill, we must first acknowledge that Batman's rule is not merely an external principle, but a deeply personal psychological construct. His moral code is shaped by the trauma of losing his parents, and it acts as a shield against the pain of that loss. This code was born out of a traumatic experience, one that Batman has never truly processed. The fear of becoming the very thing he despises, a killer, is at the heart of his reluctance to take a life. But in his struggle to protect his humanity, Batman has isolated himself emotionally, and the trauma that led to the creation of the no-kill rule has also created a psychological prison that keeps him from healing. Gotham, in many ways, reflects this internal struggle, a city drowning in crime and corruption, unable to free itself from the self-imposed constraints that Batman has placed on his own actions. What Batman fails to recognize is that the no-kill rule is not protecting Gotham or himself. It is keeping him locked in a moral quagmire that makes meaningful progress impossible. Gotham's criminal underworld is far more complex than Batman's original battle against street-level criminals. The rise of figures like the Joker, Bane, and Ra's al Ghul illustrates the evolution of crime in Gotham, criminals who are not merely motivated by money or power, but by a desire to push Batman to his limits, to expose the weaknesses in his code. Batman's refusal to kill gives Gotham's most dangerous figures an advantage, allowing them to grow bolder and more powerful with each encounter. The Joker, for example, doesn't just commit crimes for material gain. He does it to break Batman's resolve, to show him that his moral absolutism is futile in the face of true evil. Each time the Joker escapes, it's not just a failure of Batman's justice system, it's a reminder that Batman's moral purity is too rigid to adapt to the world around him. The Joker's ability to escape time and again and wreak havoc in Gotham is a direct consequence of Batman's inability to break his rule. Gotham's most dangerous villains have learned that Batman cannot cross the line. As a result, they exploit his weaknesses, testing his resolve and making his every decision a battleground for his morality. Every time Batman fails to end the Joker's reign of terror by eliminating him, he unwittingly empowers the villain and allows the cycle of chaos to continue. Gotham is left suffering the consequences of Batman's refusal to kill, as the city remains perpetually under threat from these increasingly dangerous criminals. The Joker, Bane, and others like them have no reason to fear Batman, because they understand that Batman's moral compass will always keep him from making the final, definitive choice that could put an end to their reign. But this refusal to kill is not limited to just Gotham's most notorious criminals. Batman's moral code has created a broader pattern in which he repeatedly faces criminals who become more powerful and more dangerous because of his inability to truly eradicate the problem. Every time Batman faces someone like Two-Face, Scarecrow, or Poison Ivy, he is essentially putting a temporary halt to the problem without truly solving it. These criminals, while not as extreme as the Joker or Bane, continue to wreak havoc in Gotham because they are not permanently dealt with. Batman's inability to permanently remove them from the equation allows them to grow stronger, more organized, and more dangerous each time. Batman's no-kill rule essentially ensures that Gotham's problems are not solved but only postponed. The root causes of Gotham's crime, corruption, poverty, inequality, and a broken justice system, remain untouched, allowing the cycle of violence and criminality to continue. One of the most tragic elements of Batman's situation is that his war on crime is being fought against the symptoms, not the causes. Gotham's problems go far beyond individual criminals. The systemic corruption that plagues Gotham is embedded in every level of society, from the police force to the politicians to the city's economy. Batman's inability to address these systemic problems and his refusal to kill criminals means that he will never truly stop the chaos that has taken over Gotham. His fight is not just a battle against individual criminals, it is a battle against the very soul of Gotham itself. Gotham's criminals are not merely evil individuals, they are products of the city's larger social decay, and until Batman acknowledges this, Gotham will remain trapped in a cycle of violence. The issue of Gotham's criminal justice system is another point that highlights the failure of Batman's moral code. Arkham Asylum, the institution that houses Gotham's most dangerous criminals, is a perfect example of Gotham's inability to cope with its criminal element. The asylum is constantly overrun with criminals who are not reformed or rehabilitated, but simply contained temporarily. Batman's no-kill rule forces him to rely on this broken system, where the most dangerous criminals are locked up, only to escape and wreak havoc once again. The failure of Gotham's criminal justice system is a reflection of Batman's own inability to break free from his moral absolutism. By continually arresting and imprisoning criminals like the Joker, Batman ensures that Gotham's broken system continues to fail. The city cannot truly heal as long as the system that enables these criminals to continue operating remains intact. Batman's belief that the criminal justice system will work, and his refusal to take decisive action, also perpetuate the idea that Gotham can be saved without drastic change. This is not the case. Gotham cannot be saved with mere acts of vigilantism or by the temporary removal of criminals. Gotham needs a complete overhaul of its institutions, starting with its criminal justice system. Batman's no-kill rule creates the illusion that he is serving justice, but in reality, his actions only ensure that the cycle of crime and corruption continues. The root causes of crime, poverty, inequality, corruption, and a lack of opportunity, are never addressed. Batman's refusal to engage with these larger issues keeps Gotham trapped in a cycle of violence, And by refusing to kill, Batman inadvertently perpetuates the very thing he is trying to stop. The systemic failures in Gotham. In addition to perpetuating Gotham's problems by failing to kill its criminals, Batman's refusal to take extreme action also highlights the city's systemic failures. Gotham's police force is riddled with corruption, and its legal system is ineffective at managing the criminal element. The city's criminals are not just individuals with personal agendas. They are the manifestation of a larger, more systemic problem. The failure of the justice system allows the criminals to operate unchecked, while the police force, often compromised, is unable to stop them. By working outside the system, Batman only reinforces the idea that the system is not trustworthy and that the only way to fight crime is through vigilante justice. But this approach is unsustainable. Gotham needs reform, not just one man who operates outside the law, but a complete restructuring of the institutions that are meant to maintain order. One of the most critical systemic issues that Batman overlooks is the economic inequality that drives crime in Gotham. Poverty, lack of opportunity, and social disenfranchisement create the conditions for crime to thrive. Gotham's criminals are not born out of nowhere. They are products of a society that has failed to provide for its citizens. Batman's no-kill rule only addresses the symptoms of this failure. It treats the criminals but does not ask why they exist in the first place. Gotham needs more than just a man in a cape to fight crime. It needs an overhaul of its systems, an investment in education, social programs, economic opportunities, and police reform. By focusing solely on individual criminals and ignoring the larger systemic issues, Batman becomes part of the problem rather than the solution. Gotham's social fabric is as broken as its criminal justice system. The corruption that runs deep in the city's politics allows criminals to manipulate the system for their benefit. Whether it's politicians in the pockets of crime lords or corporations exploiting the system, Gotham's political class is unable or unwilling to address the true causes of the city's suffering. Batman's refusal to kill and his insistence on operating outside of the law only underscores the failure of the city's institutions. Gotham cannot be saved by vigilantes or lone heroes. It needs collaborative efforts from all sectors of society to address the root causes of crime and corruption. Batman's moral code versus Gotham's reality. At the heart of Batman's internal struggle is the tension between his moral code and the reality of Gotham. Gotham is a city of extremes, a place where corruption runs rampant, crime is endemic, and the legal system is in disarray. In this environment, Batman's moral absolutism becomes a dangerous limitation. His refusal to kill, while preserving his own sense of justice, prevents him from recognizing the realities of the world around him. Gotham needs more than just a moral crusader. It needs someone who can adapt to the changing needs of the city, someone who can make the hard decisions and confront the root causes of Gotham's problems. By adhering strictly to his moral code, Batman remains trapped in a cycle that perpetuates the city's suffering. The very thing he thought would save Gotham, his refusal to kill, is the thing that keeps the city from moving forward. Batman's internal struggle between the desire to maintain his humanity and the need to protect Gotham creates a tragic paradox. His moral absolutism, though noble in intent, is ultimately what prevents Gotham from ever healing. The criminals he faces are not just evil individuals but are also a symptom of a larger societal failure. By focusing only on the criminals and refusing to make the difficult decisions necessary to address the deeper issues at play, Batman ensures that Gotham's problems will never be fully solved. The psychological burden that Batman bears, largely as a result of his no-kill rule, cannot be understated. At the very heart of his character lies a tension between the desire to protect Gotham and the fear of losing control. The murder of his parents is the most defining moment of Batman's life, shaping not only his commitment to justice, but also the path he has chosen to follow. That trauma has influenced every decision he has made, including the vow never to kill. This decision, born out of the need to prevent the loss he experienced from consuming him, is the root cause of Batman's emotional isolation and mental instability. By refusing to cross the line of lethal force, Batman believes he can remain pure, both in his mission and in his humanity. But over time, this purity has become an illusion. Batman's emotional isolation is the direct result of his adherence to his moral code. His relationship with those around him, Alfred, Robin, Commissioner Gordon, is strained, and often these allies are sidelined in Batman's pursuit of his one-man war on crime. Alfred, as Batman's constant companion, is perhaps the only person who truly understands Bruce Wayne's inner turmoil. Yet even Alfred is relegated to a secondary role, a silent observer to Batman's descent into emotional isolation. The very thing that Batman believes will save him, his strict adherence to a moral code, is the thing that drives him further away from the people who care about him. Batman has created a wall of emotional distance between himself and the world, and this wall is reinforced by his refusal to connect with others on a deeper level. The no-kill rule has made Batman a lonely figure, fighting not just criminals, but the ghosts of his past. This emotional isolation becomes even more evident in his relationship with Robin, his most trusted ally. Robin, though often a child in comparison to Batman, represents a figure of hope and redemption, qualities that Batman has long since abandoned. Robin's youthful optimism, his belief that Gotham can be saved, contrasts sharply with Batman's growing cynicism. Batman, unable to let go of the past, sees Robin as a tool, a means to an end, rather than an equal partner. Robin, though skilled and capable, is never allowed to rise beyond Batman's shadow. Batman's refusal to allow Robin to take on more responsibility, to allow him to make decisions, further isolates him. Robin, who has the potential to be a force for good in Gotham, is kept in check by Batman's own psychological barriers. This creates a dynamic where Batman, in his refusal to trust, essentially stunts Robin's growth, both as a person and as a hero. Batman's control issues extend beyond his relationship with Robin. His refusal to trust Gotham's law enforcement and politicians further entrenches his isolation. Gotham's police force, like its criminal justice system, is broken. The city is filled with corrupt officers and politicians, many of whom are complicit in the city's decline. But rather than working with these institutions to reform them, Batman operates outside the law, undermining the very systems he seeks to fix. This refusal to work within Gotham's institutions only reinforces the idea that Gotham is beyond saving by any means other than Batman's personal crusade. Batman's strict adherence to his no-kill rule makes it impossible for him to see that true reform requires collective action, not just the solitary, often destructive efforts of a vigilante. Batman's reluctance to trust the system means that he cannot be part of the solution in a meaningful way. He believes that Gotham can only be saved by him, and this belief only serves to maintain the cycle of corruption and crime. The fact that Batman's refusal to kill perpetuates Gotham's cycle of violence cannot be overstated. By continually capturing criminals but never eliminating the most dangerous threats, Batman essentially guarantees that these criminals will return stronger and more prepared each time. The Joker, for example, is a force of pure chaos. He represents the breakdown of order in Gotham, and his repeated escapes from Arkham Asylum serve as a stark reminder that Gotham's criminal justice system is unable to hold him accountable. But Batman, even though he is fully aware of the Joker's unpredictability, cannot bring himself to take the final step to end the Joker's threat, once and for all. This is where Batman's refusal to kill becomes a fundamental flaw in his approach. While Batman believes he is saving Gotham by refusing to kill, in reality, he is simply creating an environment in which Gotham's criminals grow stronger. The Joker knows this. Bane knows this. The criminals Batman faces know this. They know that they can continue to cause destruction because Batman, despite all his abilities, will never kill them. Each time Batman faces Ra's al Ghul, he is reminded that the battle against Gotham's corruption is much larger than any one man. Ra's al Ghul represents the philosophical opposition to Batman's beliefs, as he believes that Gotham's corruption is so deeply ingrained that only its complete destruction can allow it to be reborn. Batman, on the other hand, is determined to save the city, believing that Gotham's flaws can be corrected, that its soul can be redeemed. The clash between these two ideologies is at the heart of Batman's struggle, and it highlights the limitations of Batman's own approach. By refusing to kill Ra's al Ghul and his forces, Batman lets the seeds of future destruction grow. Ra's al Ghul's philosophy is not about defeating Batman physically, but about showing him the futility of his own belief in Gotham's ability to change. Ra's al Ghul's plan for Gotham's destruction is a direct challenge to Batman's own moral absolutism, and the fact that Batman refuses to act decisively against Ra's demonstrates the depth of his flaw, his inability to break free from his moral code, even in the face of true evil. One of the most glaring failures of Batman's approach is his inability to recognize that sometimes the greater good requires sacrifices. Batman's no-kill rule, while deeply ingrained in his personal belief system, has become a stumbling block to real progress. Gotham needs a long-term solution to its systemic problems, and Batman, in his emotional and psychological isolation, has failed to realize that true change requires not just defeating individual criminals, but tackling the root causes of Gotham's suffering. Poverty, corruption, and inequality are the real threats to Gotham's future, not just the criminals who rise from these conditions. Batman's refusal to kill criminals doesn't address these deeper issues. It simply allows Gotham to continue its cycle of suffering. Gotham's institutions, its police, its politicians, and its people are just as much a part of the problem as the criminals who terrorize the city. Batman's inability to engage with these systems, to work within them to bring about change, ensures that Gotham will never be free of its problems. The tragic irony is that Batman's obsession with his no-kill rule has in many ways made him less human. His refusal to kill stems from his fear of becoming the thing he fears most, a killer. But in clinging to his moral code, Batman has created an emotional prison for himself, one that prevents him from connecting with others and healing from the trauma of his past. The no-kill rule has allowed Batman to remain emotionally detached, creating an impenetrable wall between himself and the people of Gotham. Gotham may look to him as a symbol of justice, but in reality, Batman has become a symbol of isolation. A man who cannot allow himself to heal because he cannot let go of the past. This emotional isolation is detrimental to Batman's mental health. He is unable to process the trauma of his parents' deaths because he has built a life around the idea that he must constantly be the one to protect. By refusing to let others into his world, Batman only deepens his own pain. His no-kill rule, while giving him moral clarity, keeps him stuck in the past. unable to move forward. The city of Gotham, like Batman, remains trapped in its own cycle of violence, fear, and corruption, because neither Batman nor the city can escape the past. The no-kill rule has become a psychological crutch, one that prevents Batman from adapting to the ever-changing nature of Gotham's threats. Gotham needs someone who is willing to evolve, who can recognize that some battles require drastic measures. Batman's inability to take the necessary steps to stop Gotham's worst criminals, to eradicate them for good, leaves Gotham in a constant state of danger. Gotham's suffering continues because Batman, in his pursuit of moral purity, has failed to see the bigger picture. Gotham cannot heal until Batman learns to trust others, to work within the system, and to make the hard decisions that will allow the city to finally break free from the chains of crime and corruption. A key issue with Batman's no-kill rule lies in the philosophical rigidity it imposes. Batman's adherence to this rule is rooted in a belief that justice cannot be served through death. He sees himself as the moral compass of Gotham, someone who rises above the brutality of the criminals he fights. The trauma of losing his parents in such a violent manner left Batman scarred, and this scar has shaped his life and his mission. His entire quest is an effort to prevent others from experiencing the same loss, and in doing so, he clings to the idea that he can stop the cycle of violence without resorting to killing. This sense of moral purity has kept him grounded, but in Gotham, a city defined by corruption, inequality, and systemic failure, his moral absolutism is ultimately flawed. Gotham is not simply a city that needs a hero who adheres to strict principles. It needs someone willing to adapt, someone who can recognize that sometimes justice requires difficult choices. By refusing to kill, Batman denies himself the ability to make decisions that could end the cycle of violence once and for all. Gotham's criminals, like the Joker, Bane, and Ra's al Ghul, know that Batman's moral code makes him predictable. These criminals are not simply evil people who need to be stopped. They represent the deep-seated corruption within Gotham itself, and they exploit Batman's rigid belief system to further their own ends. By refusing to kill, Batman prevents himself from confronting the true nature of the enemy he faces. These criminals are not just individuals, they are products of Gotham's dysfunction, and no matter how many times Batman locks them away, they return stronger and more powerful each time. Batman's moral code also prevents him from recognizing the limitations of his actions. Every time he defeats a villain, he is essentially engaging in a temporary battle, not a final victory. The Joker, for example, doesn't care about wealth, power, or revenge. He is a force of nature, a living embodiment of chaos. His goal is not just to destroy Gotham, but to expose the fragility of Batman's moral code. The Joker wants to break Batman, to prove that the very rules Batman lives by are unsustainable in a world that thrives on chaos. Each time Batman locks the Joker away in Arkham Asylum, he inadvertently allows the Joker to escape and wreak havoc again. Gotham's criminal system, built on the same flawed assumptions as Batman's moral code, fails to contain the Joker because it is fundamentally incapable of dealing with a criminal who does not seek traditional gain. Batman's failure to eliminate the Joker for good means that Gotham will always be a prisoner of chaos, and the city's systemic failures will remain unaddressed. The inability to make tough choices extends beyond Batman's fight with individual criminals. Gotham is a city that is trapped in a constant state of crisis, and Batman's decision to operate outside the law only reinforces the idea that the city cannot solve its problems through traditional means. The police force, often corrupt or inefficient, is left to deal with the lower levels of crime, while Batman takes on the more dangerous figures. However, Gotham's problems are not just about criminals, they are about a broken system. The city's politicians are often corrupt, the economy is stagnant, and inequality runs rampant. Gotham's criminal underworld is a symptom of the larger societal failure, and Batman's refusal to work with Gotham's institutions to address the root causes of crime means that the cycle will never end. Instead of working within the political and criminal justice systems to create reform, Batman has isolated himself. He works outside the law, bypassing the very institutions that could bring about lasting change. Gotham needs a complete overhaul, one that requires collaboration between the citizens, the police, and the political systems to address the deep-seated issues of corruption and inequality. But Batman's refusal to collaborate with these systems, his refusal to trust the people who could help him, means that Gotham is left fighting a losing battle, where each victory Batman achieves is nothing more than a temporary reprieve from the deep-rooted issues that plague the city. Batman's no-kill rule allows him to remain a symbol of justice, but that symbol is ultimately hollow because it does not address the underlying causes of Gotham's crime. Batman sips isolation and the larger failure of the system. One of the most poignant aspects of Batman's mission is his emotional isolation, which is a direct result of his refusal to kill and his insistence on fighting alone. This isolation is not just a product of Batman's trauma, but also of his refusal to trust others. Batman's relationship with Alfred, Robin, and even Commissioner Gordon highlights the costs of his self-imposed moral code. Alfred, who has been Batman's father figure and moral guide, is increasingly relegated to a passive role, watching as Batman continues down a path of loneliness and despair. Alfred's attempts to guide Bruce Wayne are often ignored, and his relationship with Batman becomes more strained with each passing day. Alfred understands that Batman's refusal to trust others, to share the burden of Gotham's protection, is a direct result of Batman's inability to heal. The more Batman pushes Alfred away, the more he isolates himself from the very people who care for him. Similarly, Batman's relationship with Robin represents the tragedy of his isolation. Robin, though young, is one of the few people Batman can trust, yet Batman's refusal to treat him as an equal diminishes Robin's value as a partner. Batman's fear of losing control, of allowing Robin to take on more responsibility, leads him to treat Robin as a tool rather than an equal. This control, while born from a desire to protect Gotham and the people he loves, ultimately keeps Robin from growing into the hero he has the potential to be. Batman's refusal to empower Robin as an equal only strengthens the walls around him, walls that prevent him from forming meaningful connections with those around him. Batman's no-kill rule has not only created an emotional prison for Gotham's most dangerous criminals, but for himself as well. Furthermore, Batman's refusal to trust Gotham's institutions and his insistence on acting outside of the law is damaging to the city's moral fabric. The police force, though compromised, still represents a potential ally in Gotham's fight against crime. But Batman's distrust of the system and his insistence on working alone means that the police are left without a clear path forward. Gotham's leaders, such as Commissioner Gordon, are caught between their duty to the law and their need for Batman's help, but Batman's refusal to collaborate only deepens the divide. The city's criminal justice system is not built to handle the level of criminality that Batman faces, and yet Batman operates outside of that system, refusing to let it play a role in solving Gotham's problems. Batman's isolation means that Gotham has no coherent strategy for long-term reform. The city's police, criminal justice system, and political leaders are fragmented, unable to work together to solve the systemic problems that create the environment for crime. Batman's no-kill rule, while allowing him to operate in a way that is morally pure, essentially locks Gotham into a cycle of crime with no hope for meaningful change. By refusing to trust the system and work within it, Batman guarantees that Gotham will remain trapped in a perpetual state of dysfunction and fear. Gotham SIP's real need for reform. It's essential to understand that Gotham's crime problem is not merely the result of individual criminals. It is a symptom of a much larger systemic issue. The broken criminal justice system, the corruption within its institutions, and the inequality and lack of opportunity that plague Gotham's citizens are at the heart of its suffering. While Batman's war on crime is undoubtedly an important part of Gotham's defense, it is ultimately a short-term solution to a long-term problem. The city cannot be saved by Batman alone, and the more he isolates himself, the more Gotham's problems fester. Gotham needs a comprehensive approach, one that involves reforming the police force, addressing economic inequality, and creating a criminal justice system that works to reform criminals rather than simply imprisoning them. Batman's no-kill rule, though moral in intent, prevents him from confronting the true nature of Gotham's problems. Rather than simply fighting individual criminals, Gotham needs a long-term strategy that includes collaboration, systemic reform, and the rebuilding of its institutions. Gotham's future depends not on one man's ability to enforce his own moral code, but on a collective effort to address the root causes of crime and corruption. Batman's refusal to kill criminals, while it may allow him to retain his humanity, ensures that Gotham's problems will never truly be solved. The system is broken, and Batman's isolation prevents him from seeing that the solution lies not in his solitary crusade, but in working with others and reforming Gotham from within. A key aspect of Batman's refusal to kill is the moral absolutism that defines his code. He believes that justice can only be served through restraint, and that the line between right and wrong must never be crossed, no matter the circumstances. This approach to justice, however, is dangerously simplistic. Gotham's problems are not black and white. They are deeply entrenched in corruption, inequality, and despair. Batman's fight against crime, while necessary, is ultimately limited by his narrow definition of justice. By refusing to kill, Batman has committed himself to an endless, often fruitless battle, where the criminals he faces grow stronger while Gotham continues to decay. Rather than eradicate the problem, his moral code allows it to persist, ensuring that Gotham's suffering is prolonged indefinitely. The greatest irony of Batman's no-kill rule is that his adherence to this moral code has made him more susceptible to the very thing he seeks to avoid: losing his humanity. His fear of becoming a killer, of crossing the line, has caused him to isolate himself emotionally, both from Gotham's citizens and from his closest allies. Batman's refusal to trust others and his insistence on fighting alone has created an emotional barrier that prevents him from forming the connections necessary to heal and grow. The trauma of losing his parents and the fear of becoming a murderer have shaped his identity, but in doing so, they have also created a self-destructive cycle. Batman is not only trapped in an eternal struggle against Gotham's criminals, but he is also locked in a battle with himself, constantly questioning whether he is still the hero he believes himself to be, or if, by continuing to fight in this way, he is becoming the very thing he swore to destroy. This internal conflict is most evident in Batman's relationships with his trusted allies. Alfred, Robin, and Commissioner Gordon are not just secondary characters in Batman's journey. They are representations of the human connections Batman desperately needs but continually denies. Alfred, Batman's father figure, has spent years trying to guide Bruce Wayne back to a path of emotional healing, but Batman repeatedly pushes him away. Alfred understands that the key to Batman's salvation is not in his moral absolutism, but in his ability to trust and connect with others. Alfred sees the man behind the mask, but Batman's fear of losing control prevents him from allowing Alfred to help him. This isolation drives a wedge between them, and Alfred's role becomes more limited even though he is the only one who truly understands the man Bruce Wayne has become. Batman's refusal to let others in, to trust others, only deepens his loneliness and psychological turmoil. Similarly, Batman's relationship with Robin is a reflection of his internal battle. Robin, as Batman's first partner, represents hope and redemption, qualities that Batman has long since abandoned. Robin believes that Gotham can be saved, that it can be healed, but Batman, stuck in his trauma, cannot see beyond his own pain. Robin's youthful optimism stands in stark contrast to Batman's growing cynicism. While Robin tries to offer a partnership, Batman continues to control the relationship, pushing Robin aside when he begins to take on too much responsibility. Robin, despite his talents and capabilities, is never allowed to fully rise to the occasion and become Batman's equal. Batman's inability to trust Robin, or allow him to grow into the hero he could be, is a direct consequence of Batman's fear of losing control, and fear of others surpassing him. Instead of seeing Robin as an ally, Batman uses him as a tool, perpetuating the cycle of emotional isolation that has defined his journey. This control further isolates Batman, preventing him from recognizing that true strength comes not from solitary effort, but from collaboration and trust. What is perhaps most tragic about Batman's no-kill rule is that it forces him into an eternal struggle against a never-ending wave of crime, rather than allowing him to seek more comprehensive solutions. Gotham's problems are systemic. They are rooted in the city's corruption, inequality, and institutional failures. The criminals Batman faces are not isolated incidents. They are products of a much deeper issue that runs through the very fabric of Gotham. Gotham's criminal world is a reflection of the city's decay, a city that is both economic and moral bankrupt. While Batman fights individual criminals, he never truly confronts the systemic issues that allow them to operate. The police force, the courts, and the political system are all riddled with corruption, which allows criminals like the Joker, Bane, and others to not only thrive, but to repeatedly escape the law. The broken criminal justice system, rather than serving as a barrier to crime, becomes a facilitator of it. And Batman's refusal to act outside of his moral code ensures that these systemic failures continue to plague Gotham. By adhering to his no-kill rule, Batman effectively removes himself from the conversation about reform. Gotham does not need a hero who works outside the law. It needs a leader who can work within the system to fix what is broken. Batman's role as a vigilante, as a lone wolf operating in the shadows, reinforces the idea that the system is flawed and cannot be trusted. This, in turn, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where Gotham remains stuck in its corrupt state. Batman's solitary war on crime is an important one, but it is not the answer to Gotham's systemic problems. By refusing to trust others and work within Gotham's broken institutions, Batman is not solving the city's problems, he is merely prolonging them. Gotham needs reform, not just from Batman's actions, but from the institutions that need to be overhauled, restored, and restructured. Batman's no-kill rule has ironically become part of the system that keeps Gotham in chaos. His inability to adapt to the complexities of Gotham's issues means that the city will never move beyond its current state. In addition to Gotham's criminal system, There is the issue of political corruption. Gotham's politicians are often corrupt, compromised by criminal organizations or self-serving interests. These figures are unwilling to address the systemic issues that fuel crime because they are too invested in maintaining their own power. Batman's decision to fight crime alone, to operate outside the system, does little to address this corruption. The more Batman fights alone, the more Gotham's institutions fail to rise to the occasion. The political leaders of Gotham are never forced to face the consequences of their own actions. By working outside the system, Batman keeps these leaders from being held accountable for their failure to address the root causes of crime. Gotham cannot be saved by one man, no matter how skilled or determined. It needs a revolution, a collective effort to address the systemic issues and reform the city's broken institutions. Batman's internal struggle and the future of Gotham. The real tragedy of Batman's no-kill rule is not just the inability to defeat Gotham's criminals, but the way it traps Batman in a psychological struggle that he cannot escape. Gotham's problems, as we've seen, are not just about criminals who break the law. They are about a city that is built on corruption, inequality, and neglect. Batman's refusal to adapt to the realities of Gotham's needs, and his insistence on working outside the system, means that he will never truly fix the city. Batman's moral code keeps him from seeing the deeper issues that cause crime to flourish in Gotham. Instead of being a force for change, Batman becomes part of the problem, perpetuating the cycle of violence and chaos that defines Gotham's existence. As long as Batman continues to operate as a lone vigilante, Gotham will never escape its cycle of crime. Gotham's future cannot be built on one man's refusal to kill. It needs collective action, reform, and a commitment to addressing the root causes of its problems. Gotham's problems will not be solved by Batman's moral code, but by a comprehensive approach that addresses the systemic issues that have caused crime to thrive. Batman's no-kill rule, while it may preserve his humanity, ultimately keeps him trapped in a cycle of failure. Gotham cannot heal until Batman learns to let go of his moral absolutism, to trust others, and to work within the system to bring about real change. As we reach the conclusion of this analysis on Batman's no-kill rule and its profound consequences, we must confront the reality that Gotham, as a city, remains trapped in a never-ending cycle of crime, corruption, and violence because of Batman's adherence to this moral code. While his refusal to kill has made him a symbol of justice, it has also created a paradox, a situation where his pursuit of justice, driven by a deep moral conviction, ultimately keeps him from solving Gotham's deeper systemic issues. The city's problems are not just the result of bad individuals. They are the product of deep-rooted social, economic, and political dysfunctions. By fighting individual criminals and refusing to take decisive action against the underlying causes of crime, Batman has inadvertently ensured that Gotham remains perpetually stuck in its own decay. Batman's no-kill rule, born from a place of personal trauma and a desire to protect his humanity, has led him down a path where the very thing he fought to avoid, becoming a killer, has consumed him in a different way. His refusal to break his moral code traps him in a cycle of self-doubt, fear, and isolation. This isolation prevents him from trusting others and forming the connections needed to build a coalition that could truly bring change to Gotham. His emotional detachment from Gotham's people, and even from his most trusted allies, like Alfred and Robin, demonstrates that his moral code has not only created a physical barrier between him and the criminals he faces, but also a psychological wall that keeps him from healing. Batman's self-imposed isolation, while born from a desire to retain control, makes him weaker, more emotionally vulnerable, and ultimately more ineffective in achieving his goal to protect Gotham. Furthermore, the refusal to kill creates an environment where Gotham's most dangerous criminals are allowed to thrive. Figures like the Joker, Bane, and Ra's al Ghul learn from each encounter with Batman and grow stronger with each cycle. The Joker, in particular, is a master manipulator who understands that Batman's refusal to kill is his greatest weakness, one that the Joker can exploit to push Batman toward his breaking point. By capturing and releasing criminals like the Joker, Batman not only perpetuates the cycle of violence, but empowers the criminals. The longer these criminals are allowed to escape and wreak havoc on Gotham, the more entrenched Gotham's criminal underworld becomes. In addition to this, Batman's moral code exacerbates Gotham's systemic issues. Gotham's criminal justice system is inherently flawed, corrupted, and unable to handle the kind of threat that Batman faces. Arkham Asylum, the very institution that is supposed to house Gotham's most dangerous criminals, is a revolving door. Criminals are incarcerated, only to escape and return stronger than before. The system itself is unable to deal with the extreme nature of Gotham's crime, and Batman's refusal to kill ensures that this broken system continues to function in the same ineffective way. Rather than addressing the root causes of crime, economic inequality, political corruption, and the city's failing institutions, Batman fights an unending war on crime, ultimately failing to make any lasting impact on the systemic issues that define Gotham's state. The paradox of Batman's mission is that his insistence on operating alone, refusing to work with the police or the system, and adhering strictly to his moral code, prevents him from ever achieving the real change that Gotham so desperately needs. The city's criminals may be stopped temporarily, but they always return, and the underlying corruption remains unchallenged. Gotham's institutions cannot be reformed by a vigilante working outside the law. Batman's emotional and psychological barriers, driven by his fear of crossing the line, ensure that the necessary institutional reforms to make Gotham safer will never be achieved. Gotham cannot be saved by one man's refusal to act decisively. It needs collective action, reform, and a reworking of its political, economic, and criminal justice systems. Ultimately, Batman's no-kill rule has turned from a moral choice into a limiting principle that has become more about his own emotional struggles than the greater good of Gotham. Gotham needs more than a moral crusader. It needs a leader who is willing to make the difficult choices necessary for systemic change. Batman's obsession with preserving his sense of justice, his refusal to kill, has made him part of the problem rather than the solution. Gotham's healing will never come through the actions of a single man, no matter how noble. It will only come when Batman learns to trust others, work within the system, and adapt his methods to the needs of a city trapped in its own decay. His no-kill rule, though born out of a desire to preserve his humanity, ultimately keeps him from being able to act in a way that will truly save Gotham. In conclusion, Batman's inability to reconcile his moral code with the harsh realities of Gotham is the key reason why Gotham remains stuck in an endless cycle of violence, fear, and corruption. His refusal to kill, while noble in intent, has not led to the salvation of Gotham, but to its continued suffering. Gotham does not need Batman to remain a lone, isolated figure bound by an outdated moral code. It needs someone willing to face the hard truths, someone willing to collaborate with others, and challenge the very systems that keep Gotham in a perpetual state of crisis. Batman's greatest enemy, in the end, may not be the criminals he fights, but the very moral code he's bound himself to. a code that, while preserving his sense of justice, ultimately prevents him from being the hero Gotham needs him to be. Batman's humanity lies not in his refusal to kill, but in his ability to evolve, trust others, and make the hard choices that will truly break Gotham's cycle of despair.